Good afternoon. This is your host, Katrina Madewell of Charles Rutenberg Realty, and you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. For our show today, we're going to be talking about tax planning and just things that the individual, the self-employed, should really know in order to properly plan and prepare for your tax time. In studio today, we have Jerry Davies of Davies & Kerr. He's got a lot of really great information that he's going to share. It's a lot of things that people don't know, especially if you're a small business or you're thinking about maybe becoming a small business. I'm sure you get the question all the time, should people set up an entity or should they just be like a sole proprietor or just keep everything in their name individually?
Yes, Katrina, I get that question all the time, practically every day.
Now, does it depend on the type of business that people are, or?
Yes, it really does. I mean, when I do seminars and people ask me in the audience, most of the time the answer is it depends. It depends on facts and circumstances, and everybody's situation is different. So you really have to come in and sit down and go over your particular objectives and what your situation is in order to fine-tune. I like to say in the seminars you get a bunch of material, but you go in and you sit down with your competent advisor, and then you get to tailor that material to a nice dress that fits you perfect.
Now, I know basically your business is made up of a bunch of investors and like people that buy and sell property, real estate agents, that type of stuff, right? Isn't that a lot of your clientele?
Yes, Katrina, that's correct. Most of our clients are in the real estate industry in one capacity or another. That we're what they call a niche CPA firm, but we do small corporations and high equity individuals as well.
Now, you're listening to Jerry Davies. He's with Davies & Kerr, and they have an office here in the Northdale area. They also have an office in Palm Harbor. Mm-hmm. I know we were talking a little bit before we met about retirement and that type of stuff and setting up like a 401k or an IRA, and how can you actually invest in that?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest areas in the tax law today. And actually, I could give an all-day seminar on it and not really touch the surface. But I'll give you some of the things that we've been doing lately. Is when you have a small business owner, sometimes they're making enough income where it merits to set up that corporation you mentioned earlier. For example, a realtor with Rutenberg. We set up a sub-S corporation and take a salary in the corporation, and also that lends itself well to setting up a retirement plan. And the one I like the most, my favorite, is the 401k, what they call the UNA 401k or the Safe Harbor 401k. And I set it up with a self-directed sponsor. The one I use locally is Advana IRA Services. They're headquartered in Largo. And we set up a 401k inside your plan, and watch this. We can turn it into a Roth, actually.
Now, explain a Roth. What is a Roth IRA?
Well,
what does that mean? A
regular IRA and a 401k is where you take before tax money and you put it in there and you get a tax break, and then it earns tax deferred until you retire and you pay tax on all the money. Whereas a Roth, you don't get a tax break, but it earns tax free until you take the money out and you never pay tax on any of it. So it's kind of like the old saying, would you rather pay tax on the crop or the seed? So for younger people, it's pretty much a no-brainer to do the Roth. And you now can set up, the laws are now, you can set up a Roth inside of the 401k so you can make a contribution. The limits this year are $17,500 you can put in this 401k Roth. And incidentally, that doesn't interfere with your ability to put in the personal Roth as well, $5,500.
Now, is that just for a sub-S corporation, or is that for something else?
It can be a sub-S corporation, or it can be any other legal entity. For example, a C corporation or an LLC type. As long as it's an entity. The 401k is set up by entities, whereas an IRA is set up by a person. It's a personal thing. But you can get $17,500 in a Roth 401k, and if you're 50 or over, you can do a catch-up $5,500. That's $23,000 in a Roth in addition to your personal Roth, which is $5,500.
How does someone gauge how much they may need when they actually are trying to figure out retirement?
Oh, that's
It's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's an excellent question, and everybody's thinking it, especially as they wind down towards retirement. And I guess it depends on each person's propensity to grasp numbers, because some people are more adept at it than other people. And they have some of my compadres out there in the industry who are wealth advisors and financial planners, excellent to visit them on occasion just to kind of get a reality check of here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go kind of thing. Because they're unbiased and they're not selling you products or services. They're just looking at your situation and got kind of an outside, unbiased look at your financial picture.
Now, I know CPAs, a lot of times you guys are trusted advisors, and then I'm sure a lot of times you get people that ask for recommendations to someone else like that for retirement planning and that type of stuff. How does one actually choose a retirement planner? Like, how do you choose who's right for you? What kind of questions should you be asking those people?
Yeah, good question. And we do get that a lot. I guess it's just because of what we do, they're trusted advisors. They do come to us for advice in other areas. And it's nice when you've been in the trenches long enough where you develop relationships with other people where you've already tried them and you're not just thumbing through the yellow pages. You've had experience with people in the other areas that you have an interest in. And one of the things that I like to do is first sit down with a person and interview them, because I like to send them to the right place. And it's probably not too much different than who's the right doctor for you or who's the right dentist. And I say, what we peddle is a commodity, and there's a person on every corner that can do it. I think it might, in the end of the day, it might boil down to your personality. Do you like the person? How's their bedside manner?
Right. Definitely you should mesh well, I think, with anyone that you work with. You want to make sure, there's different personality types that kind of clash, and it makes sense to essentially be likable and be liked by that person just to make sure it's a good match.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
The one thing I want to touch on, because I heard you mention, I just want to correct you with this, because I know that I found out the hard way. Mm-hmm. If you're a broker, like an independent broker, and you own your own business, you can open up any entity that you want. But if you're someone like me that you work under the Charles Rutenberg Realty umbrella, you have to actually go in as an LLC. It's the only option that you have per the state.
Yes, Katrina, certain industries do have those nuances where they limit the people who are registered within that, underneath that umbrella, and we certainly need to work within the confines of how they need to operate. And in the realtor profession is a good example, because we do get realtors that come to us all the time and say, "Hey, my broker only wants to pay me personally my name. They don't like me under an umbrella, or the state may regulate you." So we always let them find out, what handcuffs you have on, and we'll work within them. And usually there's a workaround in most all cases. We can set up an LLC or a sub-S corp in your name.
Within the LLC, yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
And get an EIN number and have that legal entity and satisfy everybody's needs. We haven't had a problem yet.
Well, I would imagine it also takes some liability off you as a person because you're set up as an entity.
Yes. Now, let me put out a disclaimer initially here. I use this disclaimer, I think, every day in my practice. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't give legal advice.
That's
okay,
right.
I got that out there. So, the legal protection that you get under a legal umbrella, the legal veil, is there. It's there by statute, and it's good, and we recommend it highly. And if you sit down with an attorney, which I highly recommend, they'll counsel you in that direction. There's two reasons for the entity, the protection of the entity veil is the tax savings as well as the legal protection. Now, the legal protection it's not really a panacea, though. I mean, we're offering a personal service. So in the capacity of you as a realtor, me as a CPA, a doctor, or an attorney, or anyone, you're governed by reasonable, prudent practices, so you can't be, let's say, grossly negligent and expect to hide behind the veil. But certainly in the more less the litigious areas where you might have slip and falls or something like that, where you're not at fault, you can rely on the legal veil. But again, consult with an attorney about legal issues.
Definitely. You're listening to Jerry Davies. He's with Davies & Kerr. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell of Charles Rutenberg Realty, and you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. Feel free to check out any of our past shows on our website, tampahometalk.com, or via a podcast. When we come back in just a minute, we're going to talk about if you've had a short sale or a foreclosure and received a 1099, what do you have to do with it, and how does it affect your taxes? Be back in a minute. Welcome back. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. This is your host, Katrina Madewell with Charles Rutenberg Realty. You can find us on our website, which is tampahometalk.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Tampa Home Talk. In studio today, we have Jerry Davies with Davies & Kerr, and he's a consulting firm, CPA, tax planning, that type of stuff. They have an office here in Northdale and also in the Palm Harbor area across the bridge. So where we left off, we were talking about planning for your retirement, setting up entities, that type of stuff. But what I thought might be relevant for us to continue with is if someone's had like a foreclosure or a short sale and they receive a 1099, do they have to pay taxes on it? How does that work? Because I know there's some different rules, right, for primary residences versus non-primaries.
Yes, Katrina, there sure is. And I get that question quite often from audiences when I'm talking to them, and I'll guarantee I'll get several hands raised when I ask them, has anybody had a short sale? Nobody in a short sale. And it's pretty pervasive, and I think that's the reason why the law came out a few years back, is because of how pervasive this the down market's created for everyone. And it depends whether you're going to have taxable income or not on the situation. And there's two different situations, as you mentioned. It depends on whether it's your personal residence or whether it's an investment property. And on the personal residence, they did extend the law again. If you have, they call it the tax relief on mortgage debt forgiveness.
It did get extended?
Yeah, it got extended through 2013, and we're waiting on the extender bills to be passed in Congress as we speak right now. And we don't anticipate them out probably towards the end of the year. Hopefully, they'll be out before the end of the year. I am anticipating they're going to extend it again. And the reason is if you purchase a primary residence, we're right near MacDill Air Force Base, and there's a lot of military people, and they get stationed about every 2 years. And you buy a house for $100,000, you borrow the $100,000, and it drops in value to $50,000, which is a common scenario in the last 5 years. And you have to be restationed. You have to sell that house at $50,000. You have a haircut of $50,000. Well, the bank is going to send you a 1099-C on that, which is reportable income. And we can't take a loss on a primary residence, so you end up with taxable income. Here are these poor folks. They lost their house. They have to move, and then here they get a tax bill on $50,000. They might not even have the wherewithal the money to even pay that. And it's a phantom income.
So they're taxing them basically just like income, like you receive $50,000 worth of just 1099 income.
Right, before this law came out, which now it gives them relief if it's their primary residence. But let me say this, it's the qualified, they call it qualified indebtedness on the primary residence. If it's your primary residence and you used the debt to purchase or improve the property, then it's qualified debt. A lot of times I'll get a situation where, let's say you've owned the house for 50 years or you even inherited the house and there's no debt on it. And here we happen along about 2007 when the market really was peaking, and you go get a $100,000 mortgage on that house. And we tank and the house is worth $50,000, you walk again. Well, in this case, that's not qualified debt because you didn't use it to purchase the house. So when the bank sends you the 1099-C for canceled debt income of $50,000, well, then you have to report it. You've also heard the phrase strip equity out of it. You've stripped equity in that case. However, even though you have otherwise reportable income, we still have some tricks up our sleeve that we can utilize, implement to get the taxes to go away on that reportable income. The two most notable are the insolvency and the bankruptcy. If you file bankruptcy and get that debt discharged in the bankruptcy, that's what we call a safe harbor. You don't have to report it. Also, if you're insolvent, what does insolvent mean? Your liabilities exceed your assets. So if this debt is causing your liabilities to exceed your assets up to that point of insolvency, you can exclude that from income.
Now, let's say if someone's not insolvent, meaning that, they have some assets or they have some things and they're taxing them. I know it depends on what their tax bracket is.
Yes.
But how much can one expect to pay? And the range is fine. If someone were to receive a $50,000 1099 from the short sale or foreclosure of their property,
Right.
What do you think that extra tax weight would be?
Again, that depends on the facts and circumstances in their particular situation. For example, I'm now seeing a marginal personal tax rate as high as 43%. But, incidentally, also that the relief from the primary residence qualified indebtedness has a ceiling. It's $2 million. So for all those people out there that over $2 million. But it really depends on your situation. And again, if you have you could have other loss carry forwards if you're a self-employed person, where you can offset that income so it has no tax effect on you. And also there are a few tricks up our sleeve that we use where we can make it go away by what we call reducing the basis in other assets that you might have. The infamous Form 982 we use to do that. We reduce the base. But now we're talking about investment property, and we're getting away from the primary residence.
And that form's actually been around for a long time, right? The 982.
It sure has.
I think a lot of people weren't aware of it until they had short sales and foreclosures, but it's been around for a long time.
That's correct. Most of this stuff's been around for a long, long time. It's just hasn't been used as widely as it has in the last few years because of the down market and how pervasive this issue has been. So the only new thing that we really needed was the relief of the canceled debt income on the primary residence. On the business side, where they're investment properties, nothing's changed. I was invoking some of these elections 15 years ago when I was doing people's foreclosures, bankruptcies. We've been using these rules for many, many years. If they have investment properties, it's similar, but it's a little bit different because when you sell your investment property, you're allowed to take a loss on it. Whereas in the primary residence, you can't take a loss. So that same scenario where you have a $100,000 house where you borrowed $100,000 and it dropped to $50,000, you had to move and it was a rental. Well, then you have a $50,000 loss on your tax return that you're able to offset against that $50,000 in income.
For the person listening right now, that may be you or someone that you know. And the goal and the mission of our show here, Tampa Home Talk, and myself and my team, our goals are really just to help you maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. So all the people that we bring on our show are here to help you with those things. And so if you're at a place now where you need to either rebuild or you're in the process of rebuilding, we're really here just to help you get to that next step, because you can buy a house again after you've had a short sale or foreclosure. A lot of people think, you'll never be able to buy something again. You will, but it's going to take some on-purpose, intentional actions on your part in order to get yourself on the straight and narrow to do that.
Absolutely. And some of my clients, they believe in living within their means, even if they have to borrow to do so, some of those.
But if you're borrowing, you're not living within your means. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. When we come back in just a moment, we're going to talk about what happens if you don't get that 1099 from the bank and if you actually still have to report income taxes on that. We'll get into some more details in just a moment when we get back. Again, we have Jerry Davies here with Davies & Kerr. They have offices here in Northdale and in Palm Harbor. This is Katrina Madewell. It's Tampa Home Talk. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Tampa Home Talk. This is your host, Katrina Madewell with Charles Ruttenberg Realty. In studio today, we have Jerry Davies with Davies & Kerr. They have an office here in Northdale and also in Palm Harbor. We're talking about tax things and planning and preparation for when you go see your tax advisor. There's some things you need to know. Where we left off, and if you missed any part of today's show, By the way, you can catch it at tampahometalk.com or on a podcast, Tampa Home Talk. So if someone did have a foreclosure or a short sale and they didn't receive the 1099 from their lender, can you elaborate, Jerry, on how that affects them and if they still have to actually claim that debt? Like, what should someone do?
Sure, Katrina. I was giving a talk at Dennis Realty last month on that subject. We were doing a seminar, and it's probably the biggest myth out there I'd like to dispel for people is, hey, I didn't get a 1099. I don't have to claim that income. I know it was there, but they didn't 1099 me. Well, you know, the crystal ball is not usually that clear, and a lot of times the big lenders, the big houses, will always 1099 because of the penalties involved. And whether you actually receive it or not, they could have sent it to the wrong address. They might not have sent it. They might have sent it and it just got lost. You never know if they sent it or not. However,
did you say the banks actually have a penalty if they don't send that?
Everybody has a penalty if they don't issue a 1099 on an event that requires a 1099. It's just that the penalties are so low. There's not really a lot of teeth in that rule. I think the last time I saw it was $50 or $100 penalty. But when you're a lender and you're issuing thousands and thousands of those, you have to be in a habit of getting those out. But the reality of it is you don't have to have a 1099. Just the actual event itself, that the transaction that occurred, is what dictates whether you report the income or not the issuance of the 1099. So if you had a transaction where you had canceled debt, yes, you have to report it in most cases. But most of the situations that I see are not resulting in taxable income at all because of some of the things we mentioned in the previous segment.
So they can essentially file, what was that tax form again, 982C?
982 is
if
the go-to
insolvent.
form. Yeah,
okay.
If they're insolvent, or if I had one client, here's an actual case, where I knew their situation. They've been a client for many years. And when I was doing the corporate and personal tax returns, I says, hey, Mac, did you get any 1099s from the bank? Because he had 5 foreclosures in 1 year. And it wasn't that he was insolvent. There was a personal issue with the lender at that time, and he gave him the houses in lieu of. And he says, well, no, I didn't pay any attention to that. And I says, well, you need to go ask the banks for the 1099s. Long story short, he produced the 1099s, and out of all 5 of them, there was about $100,000 in reportable income, and he had other income properties, investment properties. We made an election to reduce the basis and the other investment properties and excluded the reporting of the income on that $100,000. And then down the road, we made an election to transfer some of that property into his primary residence to do some other tax planning. So there are some things that you can put in place to reduce or eliminate the taxable income. And actually, in most all the cases I've dealt with, I think I only had one where we had some taxable income, and it was for a portion of it because she had losses that we used to offset part of it.
Now, in that particular scenario, you're saying they did a deed in lieu, right? So it wasn't even a short sale or foreclosure. They just basically signed it back to the bank.
Exactly. And that's a good point you make, Katrina, because usually whether it's an abandonment, short sale, cash for keys, really it does not matter.
It's a loss the bank took. And so the bank wants that. They want to write that loss off on their taxes. So when they do that, they have to push it by way of an income to you.
Yes. And the way that your listeners treat it is they treat it just as if it was a sale. Just pretend like you sold the property. That's how you treat it personally for the taxpayer. And so I recommend that everybody go get those 1099s. And if you don't receive it, go ask them for it, because that does a lot of the homework for you and your tax preparer. It gives them some of the information.
That sounds like it's incredibly hard to track down. Has that been in your experience too? Are you ever trying to chase that for your clients?
Yes, sometimes they don't exist. Like in private deals where some people just will not 1099 because they don't want to. When you have private deals or the lender, there is no 1099 to be produced, then you just got to drop back and punt. You got to fake. You got to go.
You're going to estimate whatever
you're going to estimate, or what I get people to do is go find out what that property resold at. and we use that as the sales number. And that's a pretty good, accurate
make
number
sense.
to run with. Yeah.
So if someone, I know, again, a lot of your clients are investors and that type of stuff, but if someone wanted to actually reduce or eliminate taxes on their real estate deals, can you give some
Oh, yeah.
tips on that?
Actually, yeah, that's one of the things I enjoy about this business in this industry is you can actually make a living in real estate tax-free. There is a way to do it. But actually, there's ways you can structure your entities and your deals, your transactions, if you're thinking about the taxes in mind, that you can reduce or eliminate your taxes. And I get that question daily. It's like the elder gentleman who had 4 acres over where the Citrus Mall is sitting now. And years ago, he came to me. He says, Jerry, this developer wants to give me $5 million for my 4 acres. I says,
That's a hard one to pass up, I bet.
That's a heck of a problem to be in, Mac. But here's what I want you to do. Go to your tax advisor and mention a 1031 exchange. Because I asked him, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And this elderly gentleman says, I want to go to Dade City and buy 100 acres with this $5 million and live in the middle of it happily ever after.
I'm sure he could definitely find some property for that. We could help him out.
Sure. Katrina's got some in mind right now. And if he invokes a 1031 exchange with that $5 million, at the end of the day, his estate is still worth $5 million. If he does not, at the end of the day, his estate is worth $4 million.
Now, explain a 1031 exchange. I know what that is because I am in real estate, and we run across this where someone's buying or selling within a 1031 exchange. But I think the average person doesn't know what a 1031 is. So can you break that down and explain it for the layperson?
Sure, you bet. And they wouldn't if they're not accustomed to using those. But essentially, a 1031 exchange is the best candidate for a 1031 exchange is a property you've had a while. You've owned it a long time, you've inherited it, or you've had it a while, and it's increased in value, and you don't need the cash right now, and you want to get rid of the property. You can do a 1031 exchange where you can exchange it for another property and not have to claim the gain now. You defer the gain in the other property that you exchange it for, and you don't necessarily have to go out and find a piece of property yourself right now. And if you do want to
have a couple years, I think, right, before you can.
There's 2 time limits that are very strict on a 1031 exchange, and I don't waver on those. It's the 45-day and the 180-day. You have 45 days to go find your substitute property you want to exchange into. And
so this means basically you're swapping properties. So this is how you're going to avoid the tax liability that one would have.
Claiming the gain on the property, you can defer it.
So you have to find something, meaning put it under contract within 45 days?
You have to find one within 45 days. Actually, just say, hey, you have to earmark it as the property. You have 180 days to close on it. And there are some extenuating circumstances, like you do a construction, or if you have a eminent domain where they give you a little extra time on if you want to do an exchange on those.
Now, eminent domain means basically the government has come in and given you what they consider fair market value for your property. So
involuntary conversion where you're stuck giving up the property.
You don't want to sell, but they're basically going to take it. And that could be a number of things. We had one that was in Wesley Chapel on I-75 backed up behind the property, and the seller, of course, had to disclose that there was a possible eminent domain in the future for widening I-75.
Yeah, and they'll give you, when you exchange on those, because you don't want to belly up for the reportable gain now, they'll give you a little extra time on those. But generally speaking, it's the 45 and 180 day, and you need to engage an intermediary, a 1031 exchange expert.
Now, because I know there's some risk too, right, with 1031 exchange companies. I mean, I've heard a lot of horror stories.
Yeah, we certainly heard those in the past, and the 1031 exchange intermediary goes bankrupt.
Right. This happens.
I deal with one locally, and the way he's getting around this is has set up a trust account, 2-signature trust account, which allows him and the party to have to sign on the account. So he's able to mitigate that to some degree. But again, you got to look at
That's a smart piece of advice, though. That's a really good tip that you just gave.
Yeah. They use that in order to get around that because of those horror stories. But it's an excellent vehicle to, again, the elderly gentleman, his estate at the end of the day is worth $5 million instead of $4 million because Uncle Sam didn't get their 20, 25, 35% of the tax. And the tax rates have gone up in that area in the last year or so. And one other tip I give people if you want to keep your taxes, you mentioned how do we reduce our taxes on real estate deals? And another one that's very effective is the installment sale method. You can really...
What's the installment sale method? What is that?
Well, let's say, again, you don't need all the money right now, and you sell the property, and there's a $100,000 gain, and you say, well, you, Mr. Buyer, you pay me that over 10 years, for example. And so you only have to claim 10% of it. And because we have marginal tax rates that increase as your income goes up, and more so in this last year, we've got that uptick of the 3.8%, is you can actually reduce the overall tax on the deal just by spreading it out. Because you only have to claim on an investment property when you sell it and you do it on installment sale, you only have to report the amount you actually receive.
Right. I have had that case. Actually, I had a seller that sold a property within a 1031 exchange, and it was only part of the property she was taxed on. The other part, I think she put into something else.
You can do partials, too. You can do partial installment sales and partial 1031 exchanges if you want some cash out of the deal.
Now, when you're buying a 1031, do you always have to go up in value? Like when you're selling a property, doing another one, do you have to move up in price?
Good question. You have to exchange the amount of equity you have in that property in order to do a full one. But again, you can take what we call boot. You can get partial if you don't do a full exchange. You can do a partial. And if you're really tired of real estate and you just don't want to get your hands dirty anymore, you can do what they call a TIC, a tenants in common, where you can do an exchange into, for example, storage facilities or apartment stores or retail. As long as it's the class of real estate is you're doing an exchange that's the similar class of real estate, then you're okay.
Well, when we come back, we're going to have Jerry Davies with Davies & Kerr share a little bit more on some things you need to know with regards to taxes. We're going to tell you about a couple properties that we have that are actually a pocket listing right now. They'll be live in MLS soon, but we'll give you a chance to purchase those before they hit the market. And maybe you even have a 1031 you're looking to sell those within. It might be a great match. This is Katrina Madewell, Charles Ruttenberg Realty. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk, and you can catch us on the web at tampahometalk.com. Back in just a moment. Welcome back to Tampa Home Talk. This is your host, Katrina Madewell, Charles Ruttenberg Realty. In studio today, we have Jerry Davies with Davies & Kerr, with offices right here in Northdale and also in Palm Harbor. And he is sharing on things that you need to know, because his clients are a lot of real estate investors, a lot of real estate agents, and he's got a lot of great tips for people that want to bust into the market with regards to maybe purchasing or selling properties. He's going to give you some tips in a moment with regards to taxes, things that are little unknowns. That'll be hopefully some good takeaways for you. If you miss any part of today's show, you can catch it on tampahometalk.com or via a podcast. Don't forget to like our page and follow us on Twitter at Tampa Home Talk. We have a couple properties that are coming up on the market. One of them is a 6-bedroom, 3-bath, 3-car garage in Tierra del Sol. That's going to be listed at just $200,000. It is not a short sale or a foreclosure. We also have another property in a little bit south of South Shore. It's still in South Hillsborough County. And that one is 6 bedrooms, 3-bath as well. Really nice Lennar home, very green, energy efficient type home. And that one's listed for only $250,000. Some excellent deals. Give us a call on our off-air number, 813-377-2775. Again, if you'd like to get more information about these properties that I've mentioned, or if you'd like to connect with Jerry Davies, you can call us at 813-377-2775. Or we post this information on our Facebook page, Tampa Home Talk. So, Jerry, what kind of takeaways do you have for my listeners? Some good little unknowns that you can share that will give them some value.
Wow, Katrina. I'd just like to say 6-bedroom house for $200,000. I'll be standing in line to check on that one.
I'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you. You know, I do seminar.
It's a great property. That one's actually an MI. It's up in Tierra del Sol. It's a nice property.
Is it really? Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing. You know, I do seminars around town down at Suncoast Real Estate Investors Association and other groups. And it's funny because you're talking about these numbers and taxes, and you don't really convey. It's not easy to convey this kind of information verbally. You almost want to see something on paper. But, every single seminar I walk away from, somebody will come up to me and say, Jerry, that one tip you gave me saved me $1,000. I'm like, yes, free seminar, and you save $1,000. So a lot of this might sound nebulous to the average listener, but just pay attention anyway, because you never know. You might get one little nugget that'll save you a lot.
Well, you never know. Even if you're not planning on purchasing additional properties or investment properties, you may end up with your folks' home or someone else. I mean, there's a lot of curveballs that life might throw you sometimes that you're not planning on, and it just kind of happens that way. So there's some good tips here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we live in Florida. Everybody retires here in Florida, and the people up north, they end up inheriting an estate house down in Florida. So, but I get the most common asked questions I get this time of year. At the end of the year, we're getting ready to get our report cards ready. At the end, we got a few weeks left. Give me some tips. And the tips I usually give this time of year is, number one tip, your filing system, your record-keeping system. Don't underestimate it, because, whenever I get involved in an audit with the IRS and a client, the first thing I assess is, what is their filing system like?
Now, you're mentioning specifically like receipts and bank statements and that type of stuff?
Yes. Hold on to your receipts. Don't necessarily take your receipts to your tax planner. Keep them in a shoebox at your place, because they charge
I'll give you a better tip there, and this little nugget saved my life. Like the shoe boxes can just take over, especially if you're self-employed. I mean, they'll be everywhere. It's like you have to hire a full-time person just to keep up with those receipts. But there's a service called shoeboxed.com. They send you a little blue envelope every single month. You stuff all your receipts in there. You send it off in the prepaid envelope, and they file everything on there. So when you're looking for a receipt, if you need to return something even, or for your tax planner, all of your receipts are right there. And then you don't have to worry about those thermal paper receipts actually fading.
Right.
Because that's probably an issue, right, if you have an audit?
Yeah, definitely hold on to all your receipts. I recommend 7 years. I was in Home Depot the other day, and when I went to swipe my card in the machine, it asked me, do you want me to email you your receipt? And I said, sure. So I've recently have a subdirectory on my desktop where I've been getting these digital receipts. And I think like you mentioned, we're headed there. We're headed to the digital world.
We are. There's a lot of places like Home Depot, and many of those, if you use even your same card, they already have your email address on file, and they shoot it right over to you.
Yeah, isn't that great?
I love it. And then even from there, like with Shoeboxed, we forward that to receipts at shoebox.com, and they know that my email address is linked to my account. So they basically just put it all in with my regular receipts.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
We're moving in the paperless society.
We sure are, Katrina. And our office is completely paperless now, even though we have a bunch of paper floating around. We're not sure where it comes from, but it really behooves people to get on board with that. Number one is we're going there anyway, with or without us. And number two is it saves on your expenses, your supplies and stuff. So the number one is keep accurate records and a good filing system. And number two is go clean your closets out. It's time to give to charity. You can get some cool deductions from now. The one thing I would add there is keep a receipt and put the estimated dollar value on it.
That's so hard to gauge. It's always blank. And we give a lot of stuff to charity, but I'm always like, how do you put a dollar amount on this?
Well, you can estimate, or you can go online. Those charities, the large charities, have a service on their websites where they give you an estimated dollar amount. And you can usually rely on that as a backup to substantiate it. Yeah. So, and another one is start thinking about your retirement contributions. It's time to think about your retirement contributions for the year. And most of them, you have to have the plan set up by the end of the year, even though they give you to the filing deadline to actually fund it. You really should have it set up. And some plans you have to already have set up. So check with your investment advisor on the different types of plans, because in the beginning of this show we talked about one, the 401k plan, and how you can turn that into a Roth. So I recommend people sit down and talk with their CPA right now if you can get a hold of them. They might be on vacation, ramping up for the next year.
No, I want to ask you a simple kind of silly question, but I know you said up to like $17,000 or $5,000. If you put some of this money into a retirement account, is that effectively like an amount that you don't pay taxes on?
Well, you can set up one where you don't have to pay taxes on it, but my favorite is the Roth 401k. You don't get a deduction right now, but it earns tax-free when you retire. You don't pay tax on anything. It's like paying the tax on the seed, but not the crop. Because the power of compounding, the actual amount you'll have in that account of retirement will be thousands more than you're actually putting into it. So I'm more favorable for the Roth, and you can put 17.5 in the Roth and the 401k Roth. Also a catch-up if you're 50 or over, another 55. And you can also now, with a new law just came out last year, you can do in-plan conversion. So you can put 25% of your compensation at the company level into the 401k and do immediate in-plan Roth conversion on that. So you can actually, Katrina, are you sitting down right now?
I'm sitting.
You can put $56,000 in a Roth.
That's
1
crazy.
year.
Wow.
I call that a Roth on steroids.
For sure.
That's a great thing. So check on your retirement planning before the year's over.
This is Katrina Madewell with Tampa Home Talk, and you're listening to Jerry Davies right now with Davies & Kerr. If you would like us to connect you with him, just reach out to us on our website, tampahometalk.com. We'll be posting his announcement card, who will be on the show. We also tweet out all of our information on Twitter at Tampa Home Talk and our Facebook page. I think we're going to have Jerry end our show today on a little joke. He has definitely the opposite of most typical CPA personalities, and I really have enjoyed having you. You're just walking encyclopedia here with tax stuff.
Well,
so what do you got for us?
Well, thanks, Katrina. But when you've been in the trenches for so long, like I have, but I went golfing with my banker the other day. But I tell you, never again. No, every time I yelled 4, she yelled closure.
Great. I love it. This is Katrina Madewell, Charles Rodenberg Realty. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We'll be back here next Saturday at 4 p.m., so don't forget to chime in. And we'll be here every Saturday at 4 o'clock on 1250 WHNZ. You can also catch our past shows via podcast or on our website, tampahometalk.com. Thanks a lot for listening today, and we are out.